guest today is Scott Koon. Scott, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Yep.
I'm thrilled to have you on the show. I want to get this out of the way. I'm a fan of your show. Big
thanks.
fan.
Thanks. We turned on the sun for you today in Seattle.
Herding Code, turn on the sun for me?
Yes, Sunshine, sponsored by Herding Code.
I wish I could get out today. I probably will. And the other thing I wanted to start with is you have a degree in biochemistry, right?
Yes.
And I have a degree in biochemistry.
Yes.
Most of my viewers don't know that.
We're using it well, aren't we?
I wanted to quiz you on the Krebs cycle.
Okay, go ahead. There's citric acid and there's oxygen and water at the end. That's all I remember.
You know more than I've forgotten. What do you do now?
Right now I solve problems. Sometimes I use software and sometimes I use meetings.
Okay. Let's continue a conversation we were having yesterday, which is the problem with software development these days. A lot of people think that software is that's a technology problem, and you don't think so at all. You think technology is the least of our problems.
We are at the MVP Summit, and it's a conference dedicated to technology and new technology.
Yep.
It's showing people how to use it. When, in my experience, 99% of the problems, to quote 50 Cent, where's that, Jay-Z? Anyway,
Jay-Z.
have nothing to do with the technology.
I got 99 problems and a bit ain't one.
A bit ain't one. That's exactly it. We were writing web apps before web forms, before MVC. We were designing thick clients before WPF and XAML and Java. And we were constructing messaging systems prior to RabbitMQ and REST and SOAP and everything else. So don't get me wrong, the technology is great when it makes things easier for us.
Yep.
But there needs to be a little bit more focus on the fact that we're still forced kind of to become domain subject matter experts basically in whatever domain we're trying to build an app for.
Definitely true.
And there's no halfway point between the customers and us.
So I totally agree that one of the hardest parts of my job, I'm a consultant, and I have to move into a new company, and I've got to learn their business, I've got to learn their jargon, I've got to learn how their current systems work, how they think. Sometimes they call things intuitive names or non-intuitive names, and I just got to figure all that stuff out.
Right now I'm in a financial trading business.
Okay.
So yeah, they've got 10 different names for the same date.
Right.
No, it's a
And
sell
that's,
date. No,
that's-
it's a close
that's a
date.
big
No, it's a
problem.
contract ending. No, it's an exposure. No, it's a just.
And they want a problem that's going to solve their business problem. They want a solution that's going to solve their business problem, and they want it implemented in a way that's going to make their users comfortable.
Exactly.
So you got to figure out what does that mean? What makes their users comfortable?
And
that's a big
That's
challenge.
the part of development that I love. I love making someone else's job easier.
So what's the problem?
It's that I can't learn 10 years of financial trading, or the garment business, or molecular biology in a 6-month time frame to get an app out.
Well, doesn't the customer help you with that?
In theory.
In theory, it's not happening in practice.
There's times you get a really engaged customer and they're happy to get feedback, and if you're practicing Agile and XP methodologies, you're getting stuff to them fast so that they can give you feedback fast, and you do a little bit faster iteration over the final product. But there's still that idea that they've got to teach you everything about their business and their workflow so that you can design it, because they can't directly create it. It'd be like if Ford had to go and measure everyone's body, their inseam, their back, their curve of their butt, everything, so they could design a car for them.
Right.
And you had a specially made car, or at least one that would fit for everyone on the team. Instead of just having a generic car, you go and buy, you try it out. If it works, you take it. If not,
So you're saying the onus of making this communication, have this connect happen, is all on the developer. That
I think so.
The customers aren't really pulling their weight in this relationship.
That's the harsh way I would put it.
Okay.
But I think I'm a harsh person, so I might put it that way.
I'll tell you one experience or kind of an epiphany that I had at one time. I started out as a database guy. I started out as a FoxPro guy, actually. When everything's related starts with the database in FoxPro.
Everything starts with FoxPro, period.
Period, exactly.
And then before that, it's small talk. So
anyway, so So I'm just used to thinking in terms of data, and I would build applications as I was teach them for people that understood relational data. And as I was explaining the application, I'd have to teach them, what parent records are and child records are, and why you can't delete this because it'll orphan records, and why there are two screens for this, one for the master and one for the detail.
Yep.
And customers wouldn't get that. I was frustrated. And finally, I switched my way of thinking, and I said, you know what? I need to look at this problem the way the customer thinks about it. They don't think about headers and detail lines. They think about invoices or sales orders.
Exactly.
And as a single unit of work. And it changed it. It made my job a little bit harder in terms of implementation, but it made it a little bit easier in terms of communication and
that's the way that developers are kind of trained, and I think a lot of times we're trained by the tools to do that.
Right.
So we both use Visual Studio.
Yep.
We used other IDs. Think about the tools options dialog and how many different things are in there. And then think about all these other windows that you use once or twice, that are there.
Yep.
The code may not be loaded, it may not be causing it to slow down, but it's still all this stuff when all you really care about is in that text editing area.
Right.
That's really where the magic happens.
So let's get back to the problem that you stated.
Yeah,
What's the solution to it?
Apparently the solution is to use Excel everywhere.
You've been talking to my customers now.
So my theory is that every business, no matter how big or small, Fortune 100 or mom and pop, has an Excel spreadsheet or sometimes an Access database if they've really gone, gold all the way.
It's on that one PC under the secretary's desk.
That's right, and whoever designed it is long gone, or they're still there and lovingly caring and maintaining for and cultivating.
Or they're now the CEO of the company. They don't have time to touch it.
They don't have time to touch it. But it's still running the whole company, and I think about that, and I'm like, why is that? Because obviously as a developer, I know that that's not going to scale, and that's not going to that can't be solving their business problem. Or if it is, it's not the right way to do it.
It's not the right way.
It needs to have a big relational back end with a scalable web interface that's got Ajax and Web 2.0 and real-time no way. So go back and you say, why does that work? Because it's so flexible. It allows them to transfer their knowledge of their problem directly to code in a way that is somehow approachable to them. Even though we can talk about how bad Visual Basic for applications is and how clunky all the VBA is and god-awful Excel object model. I mean, you've seen it. You've tried programming against it. It doesn't get any better the farther down you go. They're still able to, they abstracted enough of it away so they can make the spreadsheet do exactly what they want.
Yep.
They can treat it like a database, they can treat it like a Word document, they can treat it like a spreadsheet and calculate stuff and make it do things and even submit off to random
It's a data entry
places.
form as well.
Exactly. And when you go and you talk to them and you say, okay, so what kind of interface should the app apply? You start with the basics. They say, well, I want a grid. And I want cells in there. I want to be able to edit them, and I want to be able to apply colors and sort. And
you go buy a copy of Excel and you hand it to them and say, here.
Okay, why can't we just port Excel to the web and be done? And, well, Microsoft has started doing that. So I do think that the key is somewhere between fully featured DSLs,
domain-specific languages,
like Martin Fowler has mentioned sometimes, or actually a lot of times, and Excel.
Okay, so actually define the domain-specific language for me.
So domain-specific language is a way of expressing a problem domain through text, let's say, or programming code. So instead of, let's think of a good example. All I can think of is specification frameworks, and those aren't very good. So you could say that HTML is a domain-specific language for marking up language. You could say that. I don't know if that would be correct.
Okay.
But you might write a specific DSL for dealing with tax forms. It would have a concept of, instead of a database table, it might have a form.
Got it.
And you would deal with Social Security numbers or identifying data instead of at the bottom level where you're talking about strings or numbers.
That makes sense. That's that paradigm shift that I had to go through.
Yeah.
And discover a domain-specific language for me and my customer. It took me a while to get there.
Exactly. And so you can. It still has the problem of the developer who's designing the DSL has to understand the domain so that he can model it correctly. So I keep thinking of how can we get to the point where we're just building, we software developers are just building infrastructure tools, and the users are able to just use them and translate their knowledge directly into working solutions to their problems.
Okay, so one possible solution is a domain-specific language, and again, the onus is on the developers, I think, to build that language, so that at least we can get communication. Because I think when I hear you talk about this, I think it really boils down to communication. All those problems you mentioned are problems of communication.
Yeah.
They think one way. They're from Mars. We're from Venus. And,
Yeah.
We need to talk to each other. Something.
So that's kind of where I see the impedance mismatch between, solving the problem from a technical point of view. It's hard for them to transfer their knowledge to us, and it's hard for us to learn it all and turn it into code. Once we get there, it's easy to take an HTML request and turn it into an HTML page that displays the data they want. It's just knowing what needs to go on there and how it needs to be treated. The second problem is that, and this is not going to be covered in any kind of computer science course. There's no college course. There's no real training out there. But it goes back to communication, where you have lots of backroom antics, and you have political games that get played, and you have deadlines that are set without consulting the developers, or they were set consulting developers before they had a full understanding of the problem.
Sure.
Like at the very beginning, someone says, how long do you think it would take you to build a system that does X? Like, well, I've never built a system that does X. Well, how long do you think? This is just a rough estimate. You say, okay, maybe 6 months. And then 8 months later, you're late. And you still, because you've discovered more things along the way. And even though they always say, we can slip it, that's okay. They've still, somewhere up the line, they've set some kind of deadline. Yeah. And there's another group that has taken resources away, and I said I could do it in 6 months with 8 people, and now I've got 3.
Right.
And you still want it
There's
done in
always
6
something
months.
unexpected. Sometimes it's deliberate things like that, and sometimes it's just randomness in the universe.
And so there's different methodologies out there like XP and Agile and Scrum and even Lean that try to address these kinds of problems.
Through better communication, mostly.
Through better communication and through a tightening of the
feedback loop.
The feedback loop and the time it takes to write the actual code. So with XP, you're doing pair programming, so that the two of you come to a solution quicker than just you would.
Right.
That ends up solving the problem a little faster. And same with unit testing. So you don't have to go and check the entire application and see, did I break anything else when I made that change? Right. You just run the test and you say, okay. 30 seconds later, you know that at least the tests are passing. So if there's any bugs in there, we just don't know about it.
Those tend to be technology solutions to the problem.
Exactly.
Which we've already agreed is not
right.
the
So the Scrum, the stand-ups, the fail-fast kind of idea, the incremental improvement idea of smaller iterations, those are all to address the communication problems and to make sure that, hey, customers, you can trust us to do what's right for you. And that's really what it boils down to, is trust. If we say, hey, we don't know anything about this, you have to trust that we're not just stalling. We're not We're not lazy. We're not slackers. We've built database applications before, but we've never built it to do what you want.
Yep. The other issue that I have is that customers think they know what they want, and they have a very clear vision sometimes what they want.
Where they tell you how to write the app.
They tell you how to write that, and sometimes, and a lot of times it's Excel. Like you kind of touched on it earlier that it's Excel, and I've somebody that push back on that and say, you know what? Think about this. Maybe you don't need all the bells and whistles of Excel. Maybe you don't need a grid, or maybe you don't need all those grid lines. I've had this conversation many times. They want all these grid lines in the user interface, which I've been studying Edward Tufte a lot lately, and he says that that's extra non-data ink.
Noise. Yep.
Let's get rid of that and focus on the data. And the best sometimes all I do is lighten those lines. But anyway, that's sometimes you need to tell the customer, or at least guide the customer to a better solution.
A lot of times, the project we're working on now, we're converting a blotter like spreadsheet that people run, use to power a multi-million-dollar business or arm of the business. We're converting it to a web-based application, and on their app, they have a button when they need to import things. So they go and they put it in a specific folder, and they press an import button,
Uh-huh.
and it sucks it in. And so the team before me made the web app, and they had an import button, so they could copy it out and press the import button. And we said, so why do we need the button? Why can't we just import the files when they're out there?
Yeah.
And it's the same. There's lots of other things. Well, we need to be able to hit this button here to check the performance on some of our trades. Like, wait, why can't we just check that when you change the trade? And you can't let the user go too far in telling you
Yep.
what they want their workflow to be. You also have to. This is part of them meeting them halfway. You have to say, okay, so you want to be able to do these 5 steps. I can cut it down to 3
Yep.
and save you, 5 minutes every time you're trying to do something.
Do you win those battles?
A lot of times, because
Yeah.
what I do is I prototype it up and I say, okay,
Yeah.
here's the way we did it, the way you said it. And then I thought, well, maybe we can do this, and we show it to them, and then when they see,
Right.
that is faster, and then they may come up with other things like, well, what if this value and this value? Okay, we can add those and there's rules.
There you go. Then the relationship's starting to improve.
Then you're starting
building some trust.
And once they realize that, hey, they're trying to make my job easier,
Yep. That's the relationship
you start
we
to
want
build
with
the
the
trust.
customer.
You say, hey, we can make the magic happen. You just gotta let us, you gotta trust us enough to do this. And a lot of that problem, it's not that they're just mean people or they're dumb or stupid. It's because they've been burned in the past by devs who just go off, close the door, have pizza slid to them under the door. The flat food developers, and then they come out and they say, here is your app, we are done.
Right.
And then the app doesn't quite do what they want, and it doesn't work, and they have all sorts of workarounds where they have to do extra work or more work.
Yep.
What they wanted was less, and somebody has forced them to use it instead of them wanting to use it. That's really where the biggest problem comes in. That's where a lot of the political issues that I see come in. Someone is forcing it top down versus it being bottom up.
How do you resolve a highly political environment as a consultant, as an outsider coming into that? How do you navigate that? I guess resolve is the wrong word. I don't know.
My solution has been, there's a guy, JP Budahu, a long time ago, who gave me some advice. He said, you can change your job or you can change your job.
Okay. So you do your best to change that environment.
I do my best, but at some point
you got to cut bait.
Yeah, I'm like, I want to be happy.
Yeah.
I don't want to work somewhere where I'm not happy. But there are ways you can get around it. A lot of the ways you do it is by demonstrating success. The more success that you have,
the more credibility you have.
the more they're apt to trust you, even if they've been burned before.
And then you become kind of immune to some of the politics that are affecting
Exactly.
the rest of the office.
So you go there, and the people will tell you, it's okay. We're going to need this much, and well, you guys do that unit testing, right? Where you write all this extra code instead of just the code I need. Well, don't do any of that. And we say, so in my experience, this is, it's better if we do some level of automated testing. And, we'll try it, but I don't want you guys spending too much time on it. And it's just like documentation. Everyone wants it, but, no, we don't have time for it. Then you get done and, hey, look, no one knows what this thing does. But it's, so you go through, you do a couple of iterations with testing, and you come back and say, see, it didn't take us any longer. And in fact, it's more stable than you've gotten from other teams in the past.
I had a requirement one time that I wasn't going to rename any of the controls on the forms. I was going to leave them as label 1, text box 1. That was actually in the requirements because
And
they felt that was
why?
unnecessary. It was going to take longer. They didn't want me wasting time on that sort of thing.
Yeah, that goes back to, hey, they're telling you how to program.
They were telling me how to program.
Like, no one is going to want to do that.
Any final thoughts?
No. Well, I mean, it's not a problem that's going to be easily solved. And it's certainly not going to be solved by the latest shiny new technology framework or Node.js or Ruby on Rails or, COBOL on cogs or whatever the next, new framework's going to be. It's just, you got to sit down, you got to demonstrate success. And I think that's going to be the ultimate solution to the problem. And it's going to take some time to entrench yourself in there.
Scott, thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot for having me on. has been technology and friends. Except I don't have any friends.